This week, we're live in your nation's capital at the White House, where we're speaking to some of President Trump's cabinet on the progress they're making as we enter the third quarter of this year. A lot of great interviews coming your way on the Lion Week in Review. It's great to be back in person with Administrator Zeldin of the EPA. How are you, sir?
Doing great. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, likewise. I just got back from a trip with listeners, a cruise to Alaska.
Very nice.
And I bring that up only because what I learned about Alaska was a few things. Number one, I talked to an Uber driver up there in Juneau. We were talking about the amount of oil that state drills, and all of them got a residual check every year as a family for the oil that comes out of Alaska. And I didn't know that Alaska is a site for a lot of drilling, rare earth minerals and whatnot too. I don't think I really appreciated what we've got going on up there is my point.
Glad you were able to see it for yourself. Back in June, I went with Doug Burgum and Chris Wright. The three of us served together on the National Energy Dominance Council, which Doug Burgum as Secretary of Interior chairs, Doug Burgum as Secretary of of Energy vice chairs, and the three of us went up to the North Slope. It's something pretty wild about standing on the Arctic Ocean in June. Up there on the North Slope, they are doing so much drilling for oil, and they are so environmentally conscious. They are very concerned about making sure that they are doing it as responsibly as possible. There was a lot of wildlife. All the wildlife up there looked like they were enjoying their best life. None of them looked like victims. It was really a beautiful picture of the proof that you can protect the environment and grow the economy. And they're proposing now to have an LNG, liquefied natural gas pipeline, for several hundred miles going alongside of the Trans-Alaska pipeline. And when we were there for the visit, this wasn't just an issue about unleashing energy dominance here in the U.S. There were many foreign leaders, especially from Asian countries, where they were there to partner with the United States because they want to they want to acquire this energy from us. We should be tapping into this potential more here at home. We haven't been, but President Trump's been pretty strong and consistent in arguing that we should. It's better for our environment, it's better for our economy, it's better for our national security. That list goes on.
I mean, I hate to single out any one state, but I don't really think I internalized just how significant Alaska was. And historically, that we purchased it for $7 million as a country. Pretty good buy.
And they are so rich in resources, and they care deeply about their own environment. So as administrator of the EPA, I know that I'm going into a state that understands what they are sitting on. They want the best for their people. They want to strengthen their state and this country. They want to do it responsibly. And they also want to advance cooperative federalism. Alaska is a long ways away from Washington, D.C. They don't want bureaucrats inside of an office in Washington, D.C. telling them how they should be running their own state. And unfortunately, for too long, that hasn't been the case. We want to advance cooperative federalism as best as we can.
I know you're not the energy secretary, so this is probably a question better for him, but in terms of the development, the extraction of oil today, where do things stand when people are looking at gas prices and our production domestically of oil? Can you speak to that? I know it's maybe not your bailiwick specifically, but
absolutely, there's a strong desire by the president and his administration to be able to ramp up energy production, and this goes across many sources of baseload power. There are conversations about new pipelines. Actually, I've been meeting coming up here shortly on this topic, which is a topic of conversation on almost a daily basis of what our different agencies can do to help transport the energy. I was just in New England where all 6 states, which I visited, all 6 of them are relying on foreign sources of energy. They could be tapping into more natural gas supply. Pennsylvania could ship it to New England. Constitution Pipeline, which is a proposal from the Williams Company, would transport natural gas to New England. We were just talking about Alaska a minute ago. There's efforts to transport natural gas in Southwest United States. There's talk of more nuclear power, support for coal plants, where the last administration was trying to strangulate them out of existence. There's a desire to win this AI race. that requires more energy. It requires more baseload power. So this administration is really firing on all cylinders here to be able to meet that demand, to do it smartly, to understand the facts, the economics, and not waste any time.
Fair to say China, when it comes to energy, if they need it, they're going to get it. They're going to find it however they can find it. There is no EPA in China, so to speak. Is there?
Yeah, we are much more concerned about the environment here in the United States. And we tap into our own energy supply much more environmentally friendly than so many other countries around the world. And I remember when I was serving on the House Foreign Affairs Committee as a member of Congress, and this was right after Joe Biden was sworn in as president, and John Kerry was a climate czar. John Kerry comes to the committee to testify, and he was asked a very easy multiple choice question about the most environmentally friendly way to transport energy. And he was given options like pipeline, train, truck, etc. And without missing a beat, John Kerry, the climate czar for Joe Biden, said pipeline. Well, if we all agree that pipeline is the safest way of transporting this energy, then why are we playing along with the hysteria of these NGOs, these environmental groups, trying to shut down all these pipeline projects? And instead, you end up with, truck traffic that ends up being less environmentally friendly, or relying on foreign countries where they tap into their energy supplies less environmentally friendly than we do. You're bringing up the China point on so many fronts. When you compare energy policy and environmental policy between our two countries, you talk about AI. These are all topics that we should be winning on.
Do you think the environmental movement, whatever that means, that is people that have used climate change as a weapon, a blunt force instrument to scare people into behaving politically one way or the other, it seems consistently the American people, when polled on it, it's not something they're buying into. Climate change, man-made climate change. Where does that stand today, and what are your thoughts on it? Policy doesn't seem to be driving, or it's not being driven by that, in my view, sort of mythical idea.
I think that there is strong bipartisan support across this country for protecting the environment. And conservatives believe strongly in conservation. There's a lot of hunters and fishermen, people who come from parts of the country that are beautiful, and they would argue their state, their region is the most beautiful. That is that should be a conversation that doesn't divide us. But unfortunately, what we've seen on the left is that they will use a term like climate change to try to drive that stake, to justify trillions of dollars of new regulation that make the cost of living less affordable, to try to pass through tens of trillions of policy of Green New Deal that our country can't afford, to try to push forward a term like environmental justice, which they will use and abuse to try to get tens of billions of dollars towards their left-wing activist NGOs through self-dealing and conflicts of interest, unqualified recipients, and reduced agency oversight. The left has taken a topic that really should be uniting our entire country. Clean air, land, and water for all Americans. Who can argue against that? But unfortunately, you have people who are trying to win elections, gain appropriations of funding, try to jam through their policy agenda by making it as controversial and as much of a wedge issue and a divisive issue as we can. We should get back to the basics, just like President Trump talks about. Clean air, land, and water for all Americans. Let's conserve the environment. Let's choose to protect the environment and grow the economy.
I'll ask you to put on your congressional hat for just a second. I know you've left the House, but as you watch your colleagues in the House, are you satisfied with the progress they're making there? And as we talk about midterms, how would you counsel House Republicans going forward? Can they keep control of the House in 2026?
We can never take anything for granted. You have to work hard for it. You go to the people, you ask them for your vote, and you earn it. Once the election is behind you and you get sworn in for that term, that first term, that next term, it's important that you continue to deliver. What have you done for me lately? is something that I think is actually a pretty fair expectation of Americans. Just because you did a great job getting something over the finish line 2 years ago doesn't mean that you don't have a responsibility to continue busting your butt all day, every day, to deliver for your constituents, for your state, your region, the American public. So my best advice as you look forward towards November of 2026 is, with a Republican Congress and a Republican president, pursue any opportunity to notch as many victories as you can, to fulfill as many promises as you can. The One Big Beautiful Bill was a very important priority of President Trump's. He fought hard for it. He signed it on July 4th. It delivered on promises, not just on tax cuts across the board, but also no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. Proposals that on the campaign trail people said were impossible, or it was just some punchline on a campaign promise that would never become reality. Well, it was all brought over the finish line, and he was delivering on this promise, and that's great. Now, that's in the rearview mirror. We'll see all the benefits of implementation. It's important for Congress to continue to work hard, and I think the American public, really across party lines, especially those who consider themselves to be independent, they appreciate hard work.
And that's my final question. How important to this administration, to your work as an administrator at the EPA, is Republican control of Congress with this president, maintaining it?
There are people right now in Congress who want to work with President Trump to deliver on the Trump mandate, to heed the call of the American public, to understand the will of the American public, where they spoke out on economic concerns. They want a more secure border. They want safer streets. They want a stronger energy policy. And this administration has been working so hard all the time with this cabinet that's been assembled, with this president's team working so hard in the White House to deliver on it. And instead of us having to fight against a Congress that wants to ignore the will of the American public, to fight against a Congress that has their own priority of trying to win their own next election and resist, oppose, obstruct, impeach anything and everything, it's great for us to be able to go in the office every morning and just zero in on notching that next victory. That's what the American public wants our focus to be. That's where our focus should stay.
Administrator Lee Zeldin, it's a real thrill to see you in person, sir. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks for your time. Take care.
You know him, you love him, and we were thrilled that he made time. This wasn't even on the schedule, but he's so good to us. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, good to see you in person again, my friend. How you doing?
Living the dream, my friend, living the dream. It's been far too long.
It has been too long, and I know you are literally in the process of doing some of the most important work you can do, and that is spend time with victims of families that have suffered mightily at the hands of the previous administration. I don't know if you care to talk a little about that today.
Well, look, I'll just mention that tomorrow will be the fourth anniversary of the horrific Abbey Gate attack, which occurred when Joe Biden decided to surrender Afghanistan and Kabul, and 13 of our brave war fighters were blown up by an ISIS terrorist in a needless act that would never have happened if President Trump had been the commander-in-chief. One of the most embarrassing for the nation and horrific for those 13 families events in recent American history. So we will be welcoming some of the families here in the White House, and that's because we care, and we don't do this for, photographs with grieving families. It's an example. For last year, the president went to the National Arlington Cemetery. Why? Because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris refused to, and because the families wanted somebody there who cared, and that's my boss, President Trump.
The state of terrorism, I asked you this the last time we were visiting. You said there were things you know and that you read and that you see that would keep us up at night if we knew them. Where do things stand now, a few months later, since we talked about that?
Things are looking incredibly good. I can reveal that since the president raised his right hand for a second time and took the oath of office to be the commander-in-chief again, we have killed more than 270 jihadis across the planet, those with American blood on their hands and those who are plotting to kill innocent Americans. That's in addition to those who we neutralized during the Houthi campaign. On top of that, because it also belongs to our portfolio at the NSC, thanks to the incredible work of the Special special envoys, Adam Bowler, Steve Witkoff, Rick Grenell, our colleagues at the FBI as well. President Trump has liberated 72 Americans from being hostages or being kept in captivity by rogue nations. So we are getting it done, my friend.
You know as well as I do, and I know you watch this stuff, the insidious, ugly growth in some, I don't think it's even most, but in some wings of, if you want to call it, conservative media that seem to be becoming increasingly more anti-Israel. And the reason I ask you about this is because of what you just said. And I've been hammering this on the show. If you don't talk about radical Islam, if you don't understand what jihadis are, you're not a serious person in my view. And I think to focus even a little bit on Israel, when you're not talking about Hamas, when you're not talking about Islamism, and how destructive that is and can be, it's incongruous to me, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't understand the focus by some on Israel. Do you get it?
I do, because it's just a new gussied up version of Jew hatred. It's just anti-Semitism with a bow tie on. You know, this is just neo-Buchananism repackaged in a dumber fashion, because Pat Buchanan actually has a few brain cells. Look, there's only one Jewish state in the world, it's Israel. If you're anti-Israel, you're actually an anti-Semite and a Jew hater. And it's not the tiny nation surrounded by hundreds of millions of Arabs that is the problem. It's what we have correctly returned to the nomenclature of the first Trump administration. It is the global jihadi movement, whether it's ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, or Hezbollah. That's the problem, not a tiny state that is simply trying to survive after the horrors of not only the Holocaust, but of course, October the 7th.
I'll close by asking you, 7 months in, this administration, it's achieved a great deal. And I know your bailiwick, obviously your wheelhouse is counterterrorism, but as you look out over all of it, what do you think President Trump would say is his proudest achievement at this hour?
Wow. Look, I live in a SCIF, a classified information facility, 12 hours a day, and I have to leave your mobile phones outside. And when we come out of the SCIF, we look at, we open them up and we say, oh my gosh, what did the president do in the last 30 minutes? Because if it's not a peace treaty with Armenia and Azerbaijan, it's, deploying the National Guard to make the streets of DC safe again, or it's, the $4 trillion he brought back from the Middle East during the trip, or, on and on and on. Proudest moment, there's too many of them to list right now. I think, and because, it looks imminently possible, I think if you ask me a few weeks from now, he will definitely say bringing a ceasefire, a peace treaty to Ukraine. That will be his biggest.
This is my last question.
Yeah.
Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi. For people that feel impatient, they want justice. We saw John Bolton's home raided. What would you tell our audience that feels like they want justice served, but maybe it's not coming as quickly as they'd like to see it? What would you say about those people?
It's a kind of, I don't get this, and it kind of perturbs me, because my father was a victim of a communist show trial where they just lied about him, and at the age of 20, after being tortured, he was given a life sentence. That was my father in communist Hungary. That's not what we do. We don't do show trials. We don't say, arrest Brennan now and throw him into the Supermax. No, the whole point of our side is we believe in the Constitution. We believe in law and order, and the fact that we are equal before Lady Justice, who wears a blindfold. So all I would say is one thing. My friends Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino are very, very busy with good reason.
Be patient. Be patient. That's what that means. Always good to see you, my friend.
Thank you. God bless everyone.
God bless.
All the listeners at Salem. Thank you.
They miss you. We miss you, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Dr. Oz, it is a thrill to be with you again, sir.
Chris, God bless you for having me on.
Of course. I was talking with Callie Means a little earlier today. We were just talking about the work that you're all doing, the thing you all share in common. I was just bragging on you all. Masterful communicators. You just are. President Trump values the art of communication as much as he values the work you do.
Well, you're kind to say that. The president is very wise about the reality that you need other people to carry the water sometimes. So if you've got a good story to tell, in my case about Medicare and Medicaid, then go out there and tell it. Why would I burden the president with having to tell all the tales that need to be told about why something as big as healthcare needs to be paid for differently? And he has done the same thing with Secretary Kennedy, who was a very close friend of mine, and just brilliant at his ability to just connect with people. So when you hear him speak about controversial issues, you stop for a second. And you just start to listen, and maybe a little bit of it changes how you feel, which is, again, we're all in the change business in this administration. None of us came here just to babysit the process. So he wants that. Marty McCary, who runs the FDA, brilliant communicator, very influential in the healthcare field. Jay Bhattacharya at NIH, all these guys, when we sit and do press events together, I just marvel at them. I mean, I just sit back and enjoy the words of wisdom, the poetry coming out of their mouths.
You're no slouch yourself, by the way. You're being modest, but you know that. Let me ask you about the way in which you all have talked about this. Your subject matter in particular, Medicare and Medicaid, it is probably the most vilified and politicized item in all of government. Democrats love to use the threat of Republicans killing grandma and grandpa and not giving them their medicine and all those things. That's got to be maddening, because I know who you are and I know what you're trying to do. You're not trying to extinguish Medicare and Medicaid, but
I'm trying to save Medicaid, and the president was very clear on this over and over again. And he would call me up and say, Oz, just get the fraud, waste, and abuse out. That's what we tried to do in the One Big Beautiful Bill. And it is, to me, frustrating, alarming, that others would construe that as purposely trying to hurt the program. If you looked at what happened during COVID, there was a desire to use Medicaid to catch a lot of problems and pay for them. Well, in an emergency, okay, fine. I'll look the other way for a little bit. But once the emergency ended, the public emergency was called to an end in 23, you've got to put the rules back into the system. This is true of Medicaid and the exchanges and Medicare across the board. And we didn't touch Medicare at all, but it was pretty clear that if we did not intervene on Medicaid, well, we basically had legalized money laundering taking place and tremendous amounts of fraud and people on the program who were never supposed to be on the program.
Stunning number of able-bodied men, as I understand it, on Medicaid in particular, true?
It is shocking for a bunch of reasons. First reason is 60 years ago when Medicaid and Medicare were both founded, there was no idea, no concept that you would ever have able-bodied people on Medicaid. Medicaid was for, as Hubert Humphrey said, it's a moral obligation, he argued, of government to take care of those at the dawn of life, the children, those at the twilight of life, the mature folks, and those living in the shadows. That use of light as an allegory is haunting, but it's important. Dawn, dusk, and those in the twilight, in the shadows. But it's not really about able-bodied people who are in the bright sunny days of their life sitting at home and watching on average 6.1 hours of television or just hanging out. It's actually not what God put you on the planet to do. You're supposed to go out and make the world better. So the president said, and Congress supported him with passage of the bill into law, we want you to go out and volunteer, get an education, get a job. We'll make it easy. We'll help you do those things, but you've got to get out of the house. Otherwise, we have generational poverty. We trap people in this, but they think we're building a little fort around them. It's not, it's a cage. You're boxing them into a life that they can't get out of. And if you don't start working, at some point you get depressed. The high incidence of opiate use, depression. So what the president wanted to do is what most Americans wanted to do, which, 3/4 of Americans are supportive of this idea of getting people who can work to work. That's the kind of thing that also happens to save Medicaid. And there are other things that happen that I could bore you with for hours, but one of the things that was most frustrating is a rule was made last year that allowed states to pay 3 times more for Medicaid patients than for Medicare patients, which means if you're a Medicare person who's worked your whole life, paid into the system, you'd have to wait theoretically behind a Medicaid patient who was not working because they would reimburse a doctor 3 times more. Well, that's not fair, right? So all we said was make it equal. And you know what? That's what Obama had. We just took it back to beyond, before last year or before the pandemic. And the fact that will be controversial is stunning to me because we got big fish to fry. We have major challenges to the health of the country. The Maha movement was about that. We should not be pretending that this is hurting America when the reality is that we should be focused on how to get our young people healthy, to deal with the autism catastrophe, and reduce overall health expenses by being smarter about how we invest our money.
Have doctors been more or less forced, the business model, been forced to play, if you will, to Medicare and Medicaid in terms of the way they bill and the way hospitals and doctors fee structures are set up? Has that been deleterious, ultimately, the way people practice medicine in the country?
There's no question that when you pay for things, people do those things. If you pay for them to do extra procedures, they'll do extra procedures. And Chris, you asked a very important question. We control about $1.75 trillion of expenditures at Medicare and Medicaid. That's twice the size of the Defense Department. That's how big this is. If we pay for the wrong thing, we'll get the wrong outcome. It is imperative for us not just to pay the bills, but pay the bills for the right types of activity, preventing illness, and mental health conditions that otherwise would lead to all kinds of untoward events, making sure that we're taking care of kids and moms who are having babies. That's where the money should go. We need more primary care doctors in America. We need more nurses. What I don't need is throwing really expensive solutions that people don't want them or need them, and then paying extra to the people, doctors, hospitals, whatever, doing those procedures that may not be in the best interest of the patient. And those are the kinds of difficult decisions that you want your health guys to make. And we have excellent people in the organization who have domain expertise, who know the challenges and are aggressively moving to fix these problems. The president has already allowed us to do something around prior authorization. So we don't have insurance companies interfering with your ability to get the care you want from your doctor. This is infuriating to patients. When they have insurance, they go to a doctor, and the doctor says, well, you need to have your knee looked at, but I can't do it because you don't have, your insurance company hasn't approved it. We have a plan now for most favored nation pricing on drugs. So Americans should not pay 3 times more for the exact same drug made in the same factory, in the same box, as someone in Europe is paying. That's not fair to the American people, and drug companies shouldn't do that. And they know that, so someone's got to call them up and say, hey guys, we're onto you. We know you don't want this. You went in this business because you care about people, and just don't forget that reality. Go back to your roots. Let's make these systems work. Right now in America, 1 in 3 patients who goes to a pharmacy does not pick up their prescription because they can't afford it. They've got to choose between food and drugs and prescriptions. And so that's not a good place to put the American people. The president wants those issues addressed, and we have the money to do it. We're spending twice as much as any other country on the planet. We just got to use the money more thoughtfully.
Just briefly on Medicare. Medicare, for seniors, it's critical. Everyone cares deeply about Medicare specifically. What would you say about the state of Medicare? Seniors who are on it, should they be concerned about it? Should you ever listen to politicians who claim it's being attacked?
We are not in any way reducing expenses or investment in Medicare. What we are going to want to do is make it more efficient. And that's primarily to help seniors get better quality care. Chris, I'll share a little secret with you. The most expensive medicine is bad medicine. The better care you get, the better you're going to do personally, but the less you're going to cost the system. And the reason, because if you get a bad operation, I've got to pay the doc who did the bad operation. Then I got to pay another good doc to fix the problem, and I got to pay for the complications. That's all expensive. So let's just get it right the first time. And I think that's how we think about Medicare. So much of what seniors in America want, the care they want when they want it, and with the kinds of comprehensive support that they desire, it's out there. There's some parts of the country that do it well and some don't. Our job is to make sure we remind people who are failing that they could do better, and then to appropriately compensate or not, depending on what they're doing.
You've been good with your time. So last question, I'll just close with this. Broadly speaking, in this arena of the MAHA movement and HHS, what do you think so far in just 7 months, there have been massive changes. What do you think is going to be the lasting legacy of those of you inside Medicare, Medicaid, HHS, the consortium of all of you, NIH? I mean, already massive things have happened. Who knows what's to come in the next 3.5 years, but is there something you point to right now as I didn't see this ever happening and it's happened?
The holistic approach to making sure government works for people, especially in healthcare, is something that I did not know for sure was achievable. I am positive now that we can get some of the special interests out of the way. It turns out a lot of them don't want to be in the way anymore. So they're starting to come on board in a very big way, and the power to convene that the President and Secretary Kennedy have given us has been incredibly successful. Listen, you can pass a law, hard to do these days. You can pass rules and regulations. It's painful. People challenge it legally, and it's oftentimes you don't get the goal you really want, because the people who really know how to fix their business are the people in that business. So why not get them to do it under threat that if you don't do it yourself, we'll come in there with a sledgehammer. But you guys can nimbly make your systems work better. Go do it. We'll give you air cover. We'll make sure we protect you. And if you don't do it, we'll come after you. And that is working.
Doctor, it's been a real thrill to see you in person. Thank you for the work you're doing on behalf of all of us.
God bless you, Chris. I appreciate all the support. Thank you, sir.
Of course.
Before we close, all of us here at the Lion Week in Review and
the Herzog Foundation mourn alongside our brothers and sisters at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis. It's a grim reminder that evil is very real and it's always on the prowl. But we also take solace in knowing that those victims and their families knew the love of the Lord and have hope in Him that death is defeated and every tear will be wiped away. Exposing as many children to biblical values in their education specifically is what our founder Stan Herzog's very priority was. It was his personal wish. So to that end, we will continue to cover and celebrate the important work these Christian schools do at readlion.com. And as we close, we recognize the nation's 250th birthday. In July of next year, we celebrate the importance that faith played in our founding. We pray for our nation's children and that they will know in their educations a return to that faith in our founding principles. This is Faith and Freedom 250. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.
At the dawn of the American Revolution, the fight for liberty wasn't just waged by soldiers and statesmen. It was also led by pastors, men of faith who stood in their pulpits and on the battlefield. This is their story.
On April 19th, 1775, the very first day of fighting in the War for American Independence, conflict occurred between colonists and British redcoats at the North Bridge in Concord, Massachusetts. Reverend William Emerson, a congregational minister, lived just up the hill in a house known as the Old Manse. What he witnessed that day had a great impact on his life. Emerson went on to serve as a chaplain at Fort Ticonderoga in New York. He did not live long enough to see the full effect of his example as a wartime minister because he died during the following year. But he was the first of many colonial clergy at the forefront of the Revolution. The British took notice, and soon these patriotic preachers were called the Black-Robed Regiment.
It is well documented that Christian clergy played important roles in the settlement and development of the English colonies in North America. They were town leaders, teachers, and moral authorities. During the Great Awakening, their influence grew even more. In the decades leading up to the Revolution, tensions rose between the colonies and the mother country, and so did the activity and passion with which the clergy addressed issues facing the Americans. It was common for a preacher to use examples of British oppression of the colonists as lessons in their sermons. Soon, it became clear that such strife could be couched in a religious context, illustrating a battle between good and evil. Their words stirred their congregations and caused them to tremble in fear of what was to come. The issues listed in every petition to the king or parliament could be heard somewhere in colonial Sunday sermons. During the War for Independence, American clergy chose topics from the Declaration of Independence in their sermons.
It remains unknown how many clergymen took up arms in the colonial militias or among the Continental Regulars from 1775 through 1783, or how many ministers contributed in other ways during the conflict. But several sterling examples leave a powerful legacy. Take Reverend Samuel Cooper of Boston. He was a congregational pastor at Brattle Street Church and a close ally of Sam Adams and the Sons of Liberty. In the 1760s, Cooper publicly denounced the Stamp Act and Townshend Acts from his pulpit. Pastor Jonas Clark, an Anglican clergyman, played a key role on April 19th, the same day as Reverend Emerson. When Sam Adams and John Hancock visited Lexington the night before to assess readiness, they stayed at Clark's house. Paul Revere even stopped there during his famous ride. And then there's Reverend John Witherspoon, a Presbyterian minister and the only active clergyman and college president to sign the Declaration of Independence. Just weeks before July 4, 1776, he delivered a sermon called The Dominion of Providence Over the Passions of Men, which logically explained why independence was a moral and theological necessity. He went on to serve in the Continental Congress until 1782.
One of the most memorable figures of the so-called Black-Robed Regiment was Peter Muhlenberg, a Lutheran pastor in rural Virginia. He provided one of the most dramatic examples of adamant support of the war for American independence by a clergyman. Before the war, he had served in the Virginia House of Burgesses. By 1776, he was pastoring a church in Mount Pisgah, Virginia. On January 21st of that year, he used the time-honored scripture of Ecclesiastes 3 for his sermon. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to rend, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. As he drew to the end of the passage, Muhlenberg altered the final line, a time of peace and a time of war. Upon concluding his rephrased scripture, he tore open his minister's robe to reveal his Continental Army uniform underneath. What clearer imagery could have existed to illustrate the black-robed regiment? It is estimated that over 160 men from his community enlisted on that very day. Pastor Muhlenberg continued as a soldier in the Continental Army as part of the 8th Virginia Regiment. He served under General George Washington at the battles of Trenton and Princeton in New Jersey, and was even present at the final engagement at Yorktown in Virginia. By the time the war ended, Muhlenberg was a brigadier general.
Many pastors, known and unknown, fought to establish this nation. They set examples of what it meant to be a Christian and a citizen for other ministers who fought other battles in the decades and centuries that followed. It was not always with a musket or a sword that they fought. Instead, they wielded more powerful weapons by using their voices to shine light on the truth as the American quest for liberty continued.
The story of America's founding can't be told without the pastors who led with boldness and conviction. These clergymen remind us that liberty and faith go hand in hand. They didn't just preach freedom, they lived it. And in doing so, they helped to build a nation.